Lord God, our Heavenly Father, we thank and praise you for this evening, this time you've gathered us together as your people to take a look at Israel, especially as those of us who are planning on going here in just a few months. We ask that you would bless our understanding of your word, of the culture, the geography, the history of this place, that we might grow in our understanding of your word, grow closer to you, and that you would be glorified in all that we say and do. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, the goal for tonight is similar to some of the classes that we did last summer, trying to prepare ourselves for Israel. But that was a summer ago, and lots changed since then. We can meet in person, which is really fantastic. So my goal tonight and the next couple meetings that we have is to just run through some of those basics. Not only geography tonight, but we'll do some history, some culture sorts of things, so that we're prepared to go in October, at least a little better prepared. Traveling internationally, especially to Israel, is like drinking from a fire hose. Not just because you've got someone yapping at you the whole time, but you really do have culture shock, being in a new place, new experiences, and so as much as you can do to prepare, the better you'll do once you're there. So like I said, tonight we'll primarily be hitting geography. We'll also just answer some general trip questions, updates from where we were a year and a half ago. Hello. So before we get going, are there any questions right offhand? Any thoughts that you have before we get going?
Tour groups that have been going, have they been having some decent look at how it's working yet? It's working for them?
So far, yes. Israel right now has just reinstated their indoor mask mandate for everyone, whether you're vaccinated or not. I'm guessing that's going to change 2 or 3 more times before we head over there. I would be surprised if it was still in place in October, but you just never know. Yes, sir.
I also saw that they stopped tourism entry.
Have they redone that?
Yeah.
Okay. That would be news to me. Last I knew that starting in May, they had allowed tour groups back in Israel again. Just in the last week? Okay. So I don't know right offhand about that one. Again, between now and October, I'd be surprised if it didn't open up again. Things change over there pretty quickly, and it's a developing situation. Yeah. You're fine. All right. Well, we'll start by taking a look at our map of Israel here. First thing you'll notice is that it's on its side. If you hadn't already noticed that. North is this way, towards this room. That is north. So towards your left. It's a little different than normal maps you'll see today, but the folks that created this map did it intentionally for a couple of different reasons. First is historical. Ancient world maps were in this direction. The word for that was oriented towards the Orient, towards the east, and so that there's a historical connection there. But just practically speaking, a map this size, if it were vertical, would be 10, 12 feet tall. So this gets us a bigger map, a little easier to see. But this is a map of what is today Israel, was Israel in the ancient world too for some time, but they call it the land between. There's all sorts of fun stuff that goes along with that there. But from up north here, you've got Caesarea Philippi. The city of Dan here is about the northernmost extent of Israel. Beersheba is about the southernmost part of Israel proper, although for a time they get all the way down here to the Gulf of Aqaba or Aqba. You never remember how that one's pronounced. It's only a couple hundred miles from north to south, if that. It's a small chunk of territory, and yet here is where the majority of Scripture takes place. From Genesis, for to Revelation. Jesus was all throughout this map, or at least a lot of the time around the Sea of Galilee, then down here to Jerusalem, born, whereas Bethlehem's down over here, all in a very compact area. And yet here's where he spent most of his life. This is where most of the Old Testament events took place. Abraham came from the north and down to Beersheba. He lived there for quite some time. The people of Israel wandered around in the wilderness right here before they could enter into the promised land. They made their way up through Ammon, Moab, Edom, into the promised land, set up in Jerusalem. You know all the story, and there's more time that we'll spend in that in the coming weeks and months. But this is the place. This is where it happens, and geography matters. The map that we're looking at, the playing board, it affects the story. A year and a half ago, or whenever it was, we did this summer series, I used the example of 231 that went in just down the road from us here. It cut some of our members' commute to church from half an hour to 10 minutes. It was 20 minutes, whatever. It was a very dramatic cut, because before that went in, to cross the Grand River, they had to either go all the way to Grand Haven or all the way over to Coopersville before making their way back here. Now that that road's in, they get there rather quickly. The same sort of geography and little tricks and things like that, it affects the story of Scripture. It affects characters and how they move and how they interact with the world around them. Jesus tells a parable of a man going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Where's Jerusalem? Where's Jericho? What's the road between these two cities like? So what does it matter that there's a guy that's beaten up, stripped, left half dead on the side of the road, and a priest and a Levite walk by on the other side before a Samaritan comes by and comes? Well, when you take a look at the map and see Jericho here and Jerusalem here, it's not too far, 5-7 miles, something like that, but it is a very steep hike going from Jerusalem up in the, 1,600 feet above sea level, something like that. The Dead Sea is not far away here. That's, 1,600 feet below sea level. I mean, it's a dramatic change in elevation. And the road between these two sites is just full of canyons and twists and turns, and it's a dangerous place to begin with, let alone throw thieves and robbers in along the way. The geography affects the story. And so it's good for us to get a view of this map before we actually walk this map and explore the sites as we will in October. So as we start looking at this map, the map in front of you, you've got one printed out for you as well. They're similar, a little bit different companies that put them together. But the difference in color is elevation. And so right along the western side of your map, it'll be this lighter green color, or I guess more rich green on your maps. That's what they call a coastal plain. Coastal plain. This is land that tends to get some pretty good rainfall before there's hills and mountains that tend to block that off and cause problems in the hill country. But here in the coastal plain, things are pretty good. Decent farmland, decent place to graze your animals, to keep your flocks and whatnot. And along this coastal plain, ground is pretty level, pretty stable. And so a lot of major international roads pass through this place. You'll see on this map, it doesn't show up on your map at all, but there's one major highway that goes along the way here. They call that the Way of the Sea. This was well known in the ancient world. If you took any goods from, I guess Egypt is down here on the floor with this map, or anywhere in Africa, up to Turkey, or Greece, or Rome, you had to pass through this chunk of ground right here. Or if you took your goods from down there to up here in what's now Syria, Iraq, Iran, this fertile crescent with Babylon and Persia, you had to pass through this place. So the trade routes are highly important. And as we take a look at this coastal plain, that's a key piece of territory that the people of Israel would want to have. But they almost never had it. There's a group of people that pretty well camped out right here called the Philistines. Very familiar to us, especially battles with David and Goliath there, battles with Saul, all throughout Israel's history as a nation. They fought the Philistines. Today's Palestinians claim descendants from the Philistines, and you can even hear that connection, Philistines, Palestinians. They're connected, at least biblically. And so we've got this area of land that the people of Israel want, but they can't have. And yet it's good land. And so the more you want it, tends to be the more problem it gives you. Moving in from the coastal plain, you end up in what's known as the lowlands. You'll see it in your Bibles, and we'll talk about it as the Shephelah, or the Shephelah. It's a word that means the lowlands. So either way you say it, or you just call it the lowlands, this is the foothills of the Judean hills. You know, the main chunk of territory here that Israel inhabits is this kind of mountainous, hilly region that's rather difficult to make a living in. It's a little rougher terrain. And so this Shephelah, the Shephelah, the lowlands in between the two, is a site of a lot of battles between the Philistines and the Israelites. There's a number of valleys that run through this, and it's in one of these valleys that Israel sets up camp on one mountain, the Philistines set up camp on the other, and they both send their best warriors down in the valley in the middle to fight. David and Goliath right there. In the Shephelah, trying to gain control of this territory. If Israel is here in the Judean highlands, they're insulated from this main trade route. And so that means they're insulated from money. They don't get a whole lot of that through trade. They don't have the power they want to control these trade routes. So they're constantly trying to get their fingers into different areas of the land to gain power, to gain influence, to gain wealth, so that they can be stronger and more of a player in the world around them. So the Shephelah is really this area of battle in between coastal plain and the wilderness, not the wilderness, the Judean highlands there. So you do have those Judean mountains. The bulk of the center section of Israel is this raised mountain or series of mountain ridges, as it is here. There's not much there. Really, if you are going through this land trying to find the best places to live, you don't pick the mountains right there in the middle. There's not much to it. Water is scarce. You don't have access to trade routes. Travel is difficult and dangerous. It's hard to keep flocks and animals around here. They've done some extensive work to make that possible. But there's not much there. If God had not chosen the city of Jerusalem to be the place where he would come to be with his people, I don't think anyone would pick this land. And yet it's here that God chooses for his people to be and to dwell, and it's here that much of Scripture takes place, at least the Old Testament and much of the New as well. We're moving a little bit further east. You run into this section here that's the wilderness of Judea. This wilderness shows up in a couple different places. Right here between the Judean mountains and then the Dead Sea. But there's also a big chunk of wilderness down to the south here. When we think of Israel wandering in the wilderness, it's not, as I used to picture, forests and kind of outdoorsy sorts of things. This is desert. This is rocks. You know, not like Sahara Sahara Desert, big sand dunes, but it's just dry, barren, inhospitable ground here. Little tufts of grass maybe here and there that a good shepherd can guide his flock to, but by and large here in the wilderness, it's not nice. When Jesus is led by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted for 40 days, it's this wilderness right here. Wilderness, again, dry, rocky, hilly, dangerous. It's not a place to be. When David wants to hide from Saul, he heads into this wilderness where he finds little places that are tucked out of view that he can hide himself from Saul's army. Eventually he makes his way to some caves around the Dead Sea, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of those when we're there and get it. But this is some of these main areas here. You notice kind of center section right down the middle of your map, you've got this big green color. They call that the Rift Valley. Technically, it goes even further north, up into Turkey, if I remember right, this Rift Valley. And it goes even further south through this Gulf into eventually the Suez Canal, into the Indian Ocean. It travels a long way there. But this valley really changes this landscape of the place of Israel in the map here. Up to the north, you've got Mount Hermon, so it's a little higher elevation here. Mount Hermon is probably the biggest mountain in the area. But very quickly it drops off. The Sea of Galilee is some 600 feet below sea level already. And as you travel along the Jordan River here, this distance is only about 65 miles, but the Jordan River meanders about 135 miles to get there. It's a lot of twists and turns. This elevation continues to plummet till you hit the Dead Sea, which is the lowest place on the planet Earth. The very bottom elevation. Water flows into it and it doesn't flow out. That's why the Dead Sea is called the Dead Sea. All the mineral content in the water just collects there. The water evaporates and the minerals are left, causing all sorts of problems. Most of your maps of the ancient world will show the Dead Sea like this. Today, the water level is so low it's split into two different lakes. This little divide here is no longer, there's technically a channel that connects the two so they can keep the salt mining industry alive. But this is that Rift Valley. Because the Jordan River flows through here, because you've got some very actually powerful headwaters of that Jordan up to the north here, this Rift Valley is some of the most fertile land in all of Israel. As Abraham and Lot take a look at the ancient world that they knew, and they needed to separate because their flocks were too big, Lot looked around and he saw the Jordan River Valley, this Rift Valley. He says, I want to go there. That's good land. That's where I can send my sheep and have them graze and grow prosperous and fat and wealthy. And so Lot goes that way while Abraham takes really the rest of these Judean mountains and in a twist of fate, or maybe in God's plan, Lot does not thrive, but instead Abraham does. And Abraham trusts God to provide as opposed to Lot trusting the land. East of the Rift Valley, you have, again, a section of highlands. They call this the Transjordan. Because it's trans across the Jordan River. And this historically has been one of the locations of Israel's enemies. Up to the north here, it's just north of this map, somewhere about right here is the city of Damascus. Damascus was one of the big international players, big Syrian enemies there. You've got the hills of Bashan and Gilead, some big people groups that caused Israel problems at times. Just, I guess, northeast of the Dead Sea was where Ammon was, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Edomites, all on that eastern side of Israel. So they were hemmed in on one side by their enemies. The other side, they were kind of blocked by the Mediterranean Sea. Egypt is blocking them down here. North of them is where Damascus is, Syria, and invading armies tend to come from the north, from Babylon, Assyria, and Persia. So Israel's kind of stuck in this land. And as much as they want to grow and expand and spread out, when they do, they put themselves in danger. And so you'll see a lot of, in Scripture, this back and forth, this trying to push back on those boundaries to take more territory, but then they end up shrinking again. And it's this back and forth, in and out, as they're trying to control more of that territory there. With that all going on, mostly in the bottom 2/3 of the map here, you've got some unique regions up to the north around the Sea of Galilee. You've got this section that splits off the southern mountain range from the northern mountain range. That's the Jezreel Valley. The Jezreel Valley, named because there's a city of Jezreel kind of smack dab in the center here, if I can find it. Not seeing it on this map. I've got a couple maps with different names on there, but that's the Jezreel Valley. This is one of the key places in all of Scripture. There's a mountain range. This is the Carmel range. So Mount Carmel, Elijah and the prophets of Baal take place here on Mount Carmel. Runs this stretch into the Judean highlands there, the mountain range is there. And up here you've got lots more mountains. So if you want to get your trade route, the way of the sea, you've got to cross this mountain range somewhere. And there are a few passes along the way that you can take your way through. But when you control those passes, you control the valley, you control traffic from coming from the north into, there's a King's Highway, they call it, another trade route that runs just across the Transjordan here. You control the interaction between those two trade routes. You've got good power here, good money here, a lot of danger here. The big site that we all know and love is the site of Megiddo. Har Megiddo is the mountain of Megiddo. So Armageddon in the book of Revelation, that's the plains of Har Megiddo. So that's talking about the Jezreel Valley, the place of battle and bloodshed. There are a number of Old Testament battles that take place in this very valley. There are a number of Crusader battles that take place in that valley. I don't know as much of the history, but there's some battles during World War I that take place there in this valley. This is a place where it is natural to fight. And yet God provides for his people there in the Jezreel Valley, even when they are maybe less than faithful along the way. Jezreel Valley is very important here. Big city on the eastern side of there is Beth Shean. We'll stop there and spend probably a couple hours there. It is a massive and impressive site. They did well over the course of their history. A couple millennia is how long this city was around for, of really taking advantage of all the traffic that came through Jezreel. And you'll see the wealth, the opulence of this site, this city, that was a key place in the ancient world. Just north of the Jezreel Valley are the hills of Galilee. You've got technically an upper and a lower Galilee, but this is the place where Jesus was born and raised. There are a few kind of east-west mountain ridges along the way, and it's on one of these here that the city of Nazareth is located. One leg over is the city of Nain. Elisha healed a woman's son, raised a woman's son there. One hill over is the city of Cana, where Jesus turned water into wine. There's a city here known as Sepphoris. It doesn't show up in Scripture, but a lot of scholars theorize the reason that Joseph and his family moved to Nazareth was there was jobs at Sepphoris as King Herod was building this magnificent city. So this area of Galilee is filled with Old Testament history, New Testament history, as things just kind of overlap onto each course, when we hear Galilee, the thing we think of is, of course, the Sea of Galilee. In the Old Testament, it's sometimes called Galilee, but more often than not, it's the Sea of Chinnereth or Kinnereth. It's a Hebrew word for harp. The Sea of Galilee, kind of, if you squint your eyes, looks like a harp, and so that's why they named it that. But it's this freshwater body that's just sitting up here in the north. Lots of good fishing there in this sea. It's not a huge lake, it's just a lake. We're spoiled with Lake Michigan here, but when we think of a sea, it's something a lot bigger, a lot more grand than this that's 7.5, 8 miles wide, somewhere between 11 and 13 miles from north to south. It's not much. And yet this is the site of all sorts of ministry that Jesus did. Traveling back and forth on a boat with his disciples, getting caught up in storms, spending time in Capernaum here, casting demons out of pigs in Gergesa or Gerasa, Gadara, the textual variants. It's on the other side of the Sea of Galilee there. Spending time in Magdala, teaching and preaching in synagogues. Mary Magdalene from Magdala. They call this area just on the north side of the Sea of Galilee the evangelical triangle. Jesus does 90-95% of his ministry right there on the northern shores of the Sea of Galilee. This is where he really does his bread and butter sort of ministry. There's a lot that goes on there. So, in a nutshell, that was only half an hour. I'd say that's pretty good, running through the geography of this playing field here. Do you have any questions or comments on any of this?
Where exactly is Israel right now?
So today, see, that's the fun thing. Depends on who you're asking. There are a number of controversial areas that Israel claims that whether or not they actually have it. In general, they've got this area up to the north here. That's not all the way up here, but they got some land here. They've got most of this territory, and then from the Dead Sea and here, they comes to a point, and they've got access here at the Gulf here. So it's a, what was that? Eilat. Yeah, Eilat is the name of the town. Right there, it's hard to take a look at this map and see, all right, that's a lot of territory, but really, this whole chunk here is uninhabitable. There's nothing down there. There's no people down there. I mean, there's Bedouins that every now and then will pop up in the desert, but there's nothing there. So primarily, this is the inhabited area. That being said, the Gaza Strip, you hear in the news sometime, that's this chunk of territory with the Palestinians. The main city is Gaza, and of course this is a New Testament map, so they don't have Gaza, which is an Old Testament name. But in any case, I guess they do have Gaza down there. It's chunky territory right here along the coast that Israel does not fully lay claim to. It's technically theirs, but the Palestinians live it. It's a mess. At the same time, you've got the West Bank, which is another piece of disputed territory. It's roughly the city of, or this region of Samaria, these upper hills. They'll go along here. There's this weird little jut into Jerusalem that Israel still wants to claim control of, and then it kind of pops into the Dead Sea again, and that's the West Bank. So you'll hear of stories of things happening in the West Bank, or the big news is always the settlements that take place, Israeli settlements. So even though it's technically Palestinian territory, Israel will say, well, this city has some of our people in it, and it's important to us, and so we're going to kind of build that up and leave enough room between the houses for tanks if necessary, and kind of build up our presence here, and we'll gate off our city so that no one can get in or out except the people we want in and out. And slowly they're taking over more of this territory. There's a lot of politics involved in here, so forgive me if I'm a little vague on some of this. The other area that's a little bit contested is up here in the north, the Golan Heights. It's really this buffer zone on the east side of the Sea of Galilee between Israel and Syria. What was that?
And Jordan.
And Jordan, yeah, Jordan's up over here too. But it tends to be Syria that gives them more problems with that.
It's controlled by a blue line, and the blue line is policed by the UN with no guns or anything.
Yeah.
And so it's got an arbitrary line there, and it was Henry Kissinger was the settlement of that. And if you go up there, you see a bunch of cone hills. There must have been volcanoes at one time or whatever. And he weaved the line between the cones so that Jordan has some cones, Syria has some cones, and the blue line runs between them. And that's established the peace there, so to speak.
Tenuous peace. It's
Yeah.
tenuous, that's the word I'm looking
That's
for.
the word.
Yeah, there is a lot of tension. Syria is still technically in a civil war right now. I can never
I
remember.
don't know what they are.
Yeah. In any case, Syria's got their own issues. So when we're up in the north, it's possible we'll hear stuff going on further north of us. But they're worried about their own things, not about a random group of tourists coming through.
Do the tourists have access to the areas where the Palestinians like Bethlehem and Jericho?
Yes. So as long as there's no major flare-ups going on, they'll still let tourists through to those places. In our travel brochure, we do just mention that at cities like Jericho and then Bethlehem are conditions permitting, assuming there's no major issues going on, we'll most likely be able to go there. When I went in 2015, that was just after, even kind of during kind of the tail end of Hamas in Palestine, the Gaza Strip, they're launching rockets into Israel. And they, for a while, had shut down borders between Israel and the West Bank here, but it was a day or two after it stopped and we were so I'd be surprised if we couldn't make that work. Yeah. The West Bank is interesting, though. And it'll, actually, we might be good on this. They only allow certain bus drivers and tour guides in. So the last time I went, we had to stop and get a new tour guide because our tour guide was Israeli and he could not go into the West Bank. I've confirmed that our tour guide is actually an Armenian Christian. So he's from Armenia, which is wherever north here, towards the Black Sea. And he does these tours and he's fantastic. He works with a Palestinian bus driver most of the time. And so they're actually able to get us into a few places that some tours can't. When I went with them last, we were somewhere between Jerusalem and on this road between Jerusalem and the coastal plain. And we stopped nearby. There's a couple cities, Upper and Lower Beth Horon, kind of key places in the Old Testament. And we pulled off into this restricted area that Israelis aren't allowed. It's dangerous for Israelis to come, but it's apparently fine for tourists. But our tour guide knew of a portion of the old Roman road. So this would have been a road that perhaps Jesus walked on, not far from where Emmaus is. So Jesus is walking with a couple of his disciples on Easter evening to Emmaus. And walk right by there. And so we will have, conditions permit, good access to most of these sites. Good question. All right. Well, if you want to dig deeper into any of this, and I encourage you spend as much time in maps as possible. We did a little fuller version of this last year. It's up on our YouTube channel, the St. Utica YouTube channel, where we run through a little more detail, a little more scriptural background with some of these, just the geography of this area. If that's not enough and you need more, Go for a Good Bible Atlas. These are a couple newer ones that have come out. Good Bible Atlas have lots of pictures, lots of maps, which makes it easier to read and work through. If you want to take a look at these after class, go for it. If you work through that and still want more, I still will recommend a couple programs that work you through actually drawing on maps and marking things up. Still the gold standard is this Land Between. This is kind of the textbook with your workbook as a student map manual. And you use this to read scripture and it tells you what to draw on the map. And so you're working your way and it says, all right, circle the town of Shechem and trace where this military group went and what group chased them and how did this all play out. And working through the text with a map in hand with someone guiding you along the way is incredibly helpful. Just to be able to know these cities, know these towns, where they're located. Before I did any of this, I would read a name of a location in the Bible and skip right over it because I don't know where that is. Doesn't make sense. Why would I need to know it? But having some of that history, that knowledge is great. This is technically out of print. You can still find them on Amazon and eBay. If you get this map manual, make sure it's not marked already because that takes the fun out of it. But that's a great resource. If you can't find that, they've upgraded it. You can get this online. It's Regions on the Run, and there's a study guide. But this has a little bit bigger maps that they want you to mark up. This is area of Galilee to the north, and they have you fill out everything and highlight certain things. If you're interested, I can give you I already have given you the web address to go and order this if you're interested. Great resources to dig you deep into the text, into what's going on, and help you to be a little more familiar with the map, especially as we're working our way through it. A little on the ground.
Okay, so if you're going to want to do something that's not too deep, this is one of the ones you have,
I
right?
think that is the abbreviated version of this.
Carl
Yeah.
Rasmussen's work on it's the newest one out there. And this is the paperback, shorter version, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's got pictures and it's got maps, and you could work your way through that relatively easily. And I don't think it's it's $17, but for a book this size and with maps and color in it, it's probably worth it. It's called the Essential Atlas of the Bible. It's on demand, so you can get that locally easily.
Yeah, I think this ESV Bible Atlas is even a little more new than that. This came out just last year, I think, maybe 2 years ago. I guess it's a little older, it's 2010. I thought it was newer than that. But in any case, fantastic resource. Any atlas, really, it'll do the job.
This is something we should do like nothing to really bring with us, but
Right.
just probably get familiar with what we're going to be seeing.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to be following the room.
That's smart, yeah. But yeah, do it beforehand, get a general idea. That way when you're there, you're not completely lost. We'll all be somewhat lost. We'll probably say myself included, but that's why we've got a local host, local tour guide that'll help us with that. But yeah, no need to bring these along. Yeah.
I have a question about, after this is like, we're paid, we're in,
Yes.
are we going to get more information about what to bring, when exactly, where we're leaving from,
Yes.
and what day, because some of you kind of,
Yes. So once we hit our official 90 days before we go is the cutoff for payment, which is, where's my marker? It's July 8th. So it's coming up very quickly here. July 8th is the cutoff date for signing up, and I think even final payment when you send your passport in. Right now, they're still kind of up in the air with flights because it's a weird time right now. But whether we're flying out of Chicago or Detroit, we will meet up somewhere in the U.S. before making our way fully to Israel. I can't remember if, when I talked on the phone, the tour guide said that there was a group flying either from Detroit to Chicago or Chicago to Detroit, and when we hook up there and then travel the rest of the way. But he said that was from a couple years back, so he wasn't sure what flights that they'd offer. But one way or another, we will travel together the big leg from the continental North America to Israel.
How many people are signed up?
Right now, we've got 17 people signed up. I know there's a couple more that will be joining us. I don't believe you're officially signed up yet either, so that would bring us to 19. And we have been contacted by our tour company that there's a group in Illinois that can't travel on their own. They've got too few, and they're looking to join in with us. So that's another 10 or so folks that'll join in. That'll make it a little fuller trip.
Is there a minimum that you need?
20 is technically the minimum, but yet I've confirmed with them that they're not going to enforce any of that. Right now, they just want tourists over there. Yeah.
What's your maximum?
They've not given us any maximum.
Actually, it's the size of the bus they give you.
Oh, so it could be, well, it could be.
No, they're big, they can be big buses, but hopefully it will stay under 30, because we'll have room to spread out then in the bus.
So with that all, I figure it might be good for us to run through our schedule, run through what we're doing each day, just to give you an idea of how we've laid out this, how I've designed this day-to-day schedule. When we fly into Tel Aviv, which is right here on the west side, right along the Mediterranean Sea. It's the ancient city of Joppa. Sometimes it's Tel Aviv Jaffa in news. It's the same city right there. And that day, once we fly in, we will drive right to Jerusalem. That'll be our first overnight in Jerusalem. Other tours that I've gone on have been very random, and they have you stop along the coast here where there's nothing. It's a vacation town of Netanya, and there's nothing there. It's tourist stuff. That's all it is. Even more than religious-based tourism. It's nothing. So we're going to hit the ground running and head to Jerusalem. That's technically day 2 on our tour, and at least in years past, when you travel over there, generally it's an overnight flight, and you'll arrive sometime mid-morning, perhaps early afternoon. So even though there's nothing on our schedule of official touring that day 2, we will be doing some touring. We'll be able to take a look around, assuming we're there at a reasonable time, but get our bearings, stop in a few places. We do have a very packed schedule, so as much as we can get in earlier and work on this, the better. Day 3 then, day 1 is when we leave. We arrive in day 2. Day 3, we're mostly going to the south. Mostly Old Testament sites. We'll be hitting Beersheba down to the south here. That's as far south as we're going to go. Abraham spent a lot of time here. If we've got time along the way, we'll stop at Arad. Another great site, Old Testament, trade routes, all sorts of good stuff there. But then in the afternoon, we'll spend along the shore of the Dead Sea, stopping at Masada. Ein Gedi, is right here along the Dead Sea. David and his group tended to spend some time there. We'll stop at Qumran, which is where they found all these Dead Sea Scrolls. We'll even have some time if you want to dip in the water and go for a float, not really a swim in the Dead Sea there, but we will try to set some time aside for that. Back overnight in Jerusalem, and again with these evenings there, I had originally planned us to stay within the walls of the old city. That changed with rescheduling, but we're only a 10-minute walk outside the old city, so we can take evening walks through the city if you would like. That's
What
really
hotel are we at now?
the Ambassador Boutique Hotel, maybe. It is northwest or so of the old city. Northeast, so it's directly north of the Muslim quarter of the city there. Not far from the Garden of Eden.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
Well, they recommended. One of the nice things about traveling with a nice tour company like this, they put you up in good hotels. When I went the first 3 times, it was with college and then seminary, and we were just a bunch of college and seminary kids. Oh, well, as long as there's a bed continental breakfast here with lots of good food. I mean, not that it wasn't good food before, but they make sure you're comfortable in the evenings. And you'll want it because you'll need some good rest.
Western style hotel.
Yeah, yeah. So day 4 then, we will be making our way north. We'll stop at Caesarea Maritima. So this is one of Herod's sites that he built up. Peter, Paul worked their way through that. Paul, even as he appealed to Caesar, was in Caesarea and made his way northwest, eventually to Rome. Our goal is to stop at Megiddo, to stop at Mount Carmel, and as we're making our way towards the Sea of Galilee, our hope is to stop both at Nazareth and then at Cana before we get an overlook at Mount Arbel, taking a look at the Sea of Galilee, getting our bearings for the next couple days in Galilee. When we're up in the north here, we will be staying in Tiberias, right on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Great views, great sunrises is what it'll be. If you're up that early, it's great. I'd say the only thing that beats a sunrise over the Sea of Galilee is a sunset over the Sea of Galilee. It's just spectacular. The Sea of Galilee is kind of in a little bowl, and so you get all sorts of hills and mountains around it. Seeing those all light up, it's wonderful. Any case, day 5 we'll be mostly heading north. There's the city of Caesarea Philippi. This is where Peter made his great confession, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." The city of Dan is up here as well. Dan had been given a tribal allotment down here, but you remember this is where the Philistines are. And Dan didn't really want to put in all that work, so they came up here, destroyed a city and all its peaceful inhabitants, and it became a really a byword in Israel how idolatrous this group was, and some of the stuff that happened there. Plan is for us to stop at Hazor, key site for power in the region. When Joshua came in, it says he burned the city of Hazor, and there's destruction, a massive destruction at Hazor. So we'll see that when we're there. Making our way back toward the Sea of Galilee that day. My plan is for us to spend some time at Hippos. It's on the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Not a direct biblical site, but that's where I spent 2 summers digging archaeological stuff up there. It's a fantastic site. I know they've done even more work since I was there a decade ago. Number of churches from very early on, and some good example of Roman architecture, that sort of stuff. So we'll spend some time in Hippos there, but then making our way around the Sea of Galilee, we'll stop at the Allen Museum, which doesn't sound very exciting, but that's the museum where they house a boat that they found from the 1st century in the Sea of Galilee. And so we'll be able to see that boat before hopping on a real one and taking a ride of the Sea of Galilee there that day. Again, overnight overnight then in Tiberias. The next day, it's again just kind of slumming around the Sea of Galilee. We'll stop at Capernaum here, which Jesus talks about his home being there, or the text talks about going to his house in Capernaum. Peter's mother-in-law was healed there. There's all sorts of stuff there. Jesus did a lot of ministry there. We'll go to the Mount of Beatitudes that's up there, Cabga. Jesus fed the 5,000 there. Capernaum, Bethsaida, did a lot of his ministry there. Some disciples from Bethsaida. We'll also be able to explore Magdala. Within the last 10 years, they've discovered this site, a 1st century synagogue. So this is, when Jesus went around preaching in all the synagogues of Galilee, he was there. And this is one of the earliest examples of a synagogue that we have in this area. Just incredible finds from there. So that'll be a good day just in the Sea of Galilee. The next day, this is day 7, we'll be making our way back south again to Jerusalem. We'll stop along the way at Beth Shean, as I mentioned, just right in the Jezreel Valley there. Wonderful, expansive site. We could spend days there and not see everything. So we won't spend days there. We'll just not see everything. That's how that goes. But really a really cool site there. If we have time, I plan on us stopping just around the corner. There is a body of water, just a spring. It's called Ein Harod. probably won't ring any bells right offhand, but this is where Gideon winnowed down his army to 300 before going and fighting, and during the time of the judges there. We'll make our way south. We'll stop along the Jordan River. Chances are we'll stop in the southern location, just north of the Dead Sea. There's debates as to where John the Baptist actually did his baptizing. The south is where it's probably a little more likely, but that's where there's some ancient sites. We'll stop there and then spend the rest of the day in Jerusalem exploring the city. And really the rest of our tour will take place in Jerusalem.
Will we see Jericho?
Conditions permitting, that's the day. Yes, thank you for reminding me. It's written in the text, but not on the top headlines. Yes. So day 8, before we wrap up the day in Jerusalem, we'll start by going to a site known as the Herodium, one of Herod's palaces where he was buried. Josephus tells us all about the ritual there, and we'll be able to see that. Right between Jerusalem and Bethlehem is this Herodium. So this is kind of that halfway point between those two. And from the Herodium, you can see both. You can also see from there Tekoa, the place where the prophet Amos was from. But then we'll spend some time in Bethlehem. Again, conditions permitting, I'd be surprised if they didn't let us in. That's one that they're pretty good about keeping open. Being able to see the place where Jesus was born, where he spent some time there as a baby. Because we are allowing this other tour group to join us, I've been told we will have a free lunch at Bethlehem. So that's in Bethlehem, we'll probably have time to visit an olive wood production site. They make all these carvings and things like that. Bethlehem tends to be a good place to buy souvenirs, that sort of thing. And generally we'll have some time there. If not, somewhere in the old city of Jerusalem will be just fine as long as you're careful on that. And our tour guide will point us where we need to go on that one.
I like to buy things in Bethlehem because all the Palestinians that live in Bethlehem are Christians. And by
Right.
background. And
Yeah.
so it's an impoverished area because the wall, Israel, because for various reasons, mostly just people penetrating the Israeli border, they put up a huge wall at Bethlehem, which cuts down going in and out of Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Quite a bit too sometimes. You don't go the back way. If you try to go through there, you have to line up forever to get through there sometimes.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the reality of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even if you really want, you can buy an olive wood carving of the Nativity where Mary, Joseph, and Jesus are there, and then there's the border wall, and the wise men are on the outside. You can't come in because the border wall is there. This is kind of an interesting little trinket, but there's a lot of politics involved in all this too. So that day we'll spend most of the morning and probably lunch in Bethlehem here. There it is. Before coming back to Jerusalem. That day we will visit, if we can, the Temple Mount. Sometimes we're not allowed on the Temple Mount, again, conditions permitting. But the goal is for us to walk around up there, see where Solomon's temple used to be, explore some of the stuff on top there. Before walking around, we'll see the Western Wall tunnels, some museums around there, the Pool of Bethesda, the Wool Museum of Archaeology. That's again some first century stuff, which lots of good stuff. Day 9 will be again in Jerusalem here as we explore the good chunk of the day will be spent at the Israel Museum, Jerusalem. That's where they house the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Shrine of the Book is there. They've got a fantastic archaeology museum that if we have time, we will spend there. There's also a great model city of Jerusalem there that you can get just an overall look of what it would have been like, most likely in Jesus' day, some of the how the city was laid out, how people walked around and moved around there. We'll also head in that day to the part of Jerusalem that's now outside of the city walls, but it used to be the city of Jerusalem. They'll call that the City of David. So some of that earlier architecture from the time of King David. Walking through Hezekiah's tunnel, if you're interested, there's a dry path, so you don't have to get wet if you don't want to. That spits you out at the Pool of Siloam. Jesus had some miracles there, and that will be about it for that last day before heading from Jerusalem to Jaffa, Tel Aviv, and getting on a plane and flying back to the States. So that's our plan for these days here. It's a lot packed into just, it's technically a 10-day tour, but with a day to travel on either end, and they kind of give us that day 2, which is technically a travel day 2. It's a lot packed in here. The back of your little tour guide says it's a 4 out of 5 activity level. Not as crazy as it could be, but a little more than average. If at any point along the way you're just too tired and you can't go on any further, then you can sit back. I did try to arrange this tour that we've got a good number of days where we're sitting in one place. So if you're not feeling it that day, stay in a hotel. You don't have to come on the rest of the trip with us. I mean, you want to be there, you want to take part in it, but if you need a rest day, you can take the rest day. If you want to just come and ride the bus and see things, we'll talk and teach on the bus. Even though this is kind of a small chunk of ground, we'll spend a lot of time with the bus. We're not going to waste that time though either, so we'll do a lot of teaching there, a lot of talking, pointing things out along the way. If you're too tired to walk around the site, stay on the bus. It's just fine. It's a good opportunity, and we're looking forward to seeing all the things here. I do. How many do you want? 2? Yes. Here's July. Yeah. Yeah. They're always welcome. Yeah, so they use the Israeli shekel. I don't know the current exchange rate. It's usually about somewhere between 3 and 4 shekels to $1. So a shekel's roughly a quarter is generally how I think of it. We'll exchange it there. You can get it ahead of time. A lot of places take the U.S. dollars too. Yeah.
Yeah, most people will take the US dollar because they want it more valuable. I carry a bunch of them, single ones, like if I got some shepherd that's walking along, I take pictures of them, I slip them a couple bucks, so they'll stay around, and yeah, when we went last time, my son David, I don't know if he watched him or didn't watch him, but that was his job. He ran the shepherd on Mount of Olives. Remember, we were working our way down, and all of a sudden, boom, it was going to come. It's pretty cool when you're right in the middle of it, or a clock.
Or they'll let you on a camel for free, but charge you to get off. Correct. Yeah. Right. Not like you work with bankers.
So they really push this trip insurance. Do you think it's necessary? Like, let's say the world shuts down again.
Right.
Let's say, do we not get our money back if we don't have that trip insurance?
So, right now what the trip insurance covers is somewhat limited. It's mostly, from my understanding, health issues with you personally.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't, apparently, it does not cover global pandemics. We found that out, which is fun. That apparently was a foreseeable condition of this. What's good though is because we simply shifted instead of canceled, everything just transfers over.
Okay, so that's more of like health insurance rather than like travel.
That's one aspect.
That's one aspect. They do have some travel if you get hurt over there and need to come home. If there is some sort of event that forces us to cancel the tour or move it, come back early, it'll cover some of those. You really shouldn't read the fine print on all that. I have not in a while looked at all the details of what it covers and doesn't. So it's up to you. I probably shouldn't say this, but I have never purchased travel insurance to go over there. But
You were a student then.
yeah, I was a student, and yeah, it varies. Yep, And none,
And, the insurance they're offering is through,
Travel Guard, I think.
GIT.
I
I
think
looked
it's,
it up on the site once. I can't remember the name. But anyway, that's the same company we use to take
Okay.
mission teams to Guatemala. And we always take out a minimum coverage for them when they go down there because it's a third world country. You're going to Israel, which is not a third world country at all. It's like going across town to a major city.
yeah.
Everything's modern. You know, I mean, you'll be surprised.
At
I
least,
like going to some out of the way place.
right, at least some of the bigger cities, there, the sites that we'll be going to will be, it looks just like a pile of rocks sometimes, and the piles of rocks will blur together, but we'll pass by some of these bigger cities. Tel Aviv is like one of the major travel destinations in the world right now because of its just nightlife and culture and all sorts of food and whatnot. It's a modern city just about in a sense. So yeah, that it's a very civilized country in that way.
Or you said if the trip gets delayed, just everything shifts over.
Yes, that's what happened this past time. We were scheduled for September of last year. Obviously, we couldn't go then, so we just transferred over to October of this year, and everything you paid in up until that point got transferred over. The total price of the trip increased, but if you signed up originally with that trip, there was no extra charge. So this company is very good about taking care of the customer here, travelers.
Have you had any experience using credit cards?
Oh, that's what you want to charge, by the way. If you want to buy something, you really want to use your credit card. Because it gets you the guaranteed rate.
Okay.
Yeah, probably the best rate of the day as opposed to a money changer that'll.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I carry very little cash except to have some dollars I want to do something
Yeah,
with.
I would suggest that depending on where you want to travel to, or where you're purchasing things from. You know, a little shop in the old city, you're probably gonna want cash. Bethlehem credit card will be just fine. The places will stop for lunch, most of those credit card will be fine too. But yeah, especially,
Is-
yes.
I was gonna say, particular credit card that they do, or
Oh, you don't want to have Discover. I know, so do I. But that's one card that's not real good outside in the world, especially in Europe and
Yeah.
in Israel.
I have
But for Visa or MasterCard, you see the signs all over the place.
Well, we have experience
Mhm.
in using credit cards.
Mhm.
Oh, it was from him and our daughter, wiring money over to
Really?
us. And we picked it up at
Small city.
Right.
Oh,
it's
yeah, that
terrible.
happens. Yeah.
We should have gotten more currency before we were there.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some stuff not being private except for the review.
Go right off.
I'm sure if you just do a random Google search though, for what credit cards do they take with
Yeah.
us?
That's probably true.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll do well with Visa. I've been to Israel since 2012, 5 times, 6 times, and I've never had problems with my credit card.
Mhm.
They figure out a way, even those shops figure out a way who's got access. Well, hold on, I can pick you up, you know.
Do you have to let the credit card company know you're done?
Yes, you absolutely do. But you can do that online now. You can go online to your credit card company and say, I'm going to be in Israel from such and such a date, and that'll give you this access. And they usually ask you what cities you're traveling through, so if you end up using it in Atlanta, New York,
Right.
Toronto, wherever we're going to finally go from, those households and stuff, get away for a plane, so
Mhm.
that's good to do. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Probably a good plan, yeah.
You take two different cards, not on one card, you both have it. Have a second one, because one is shut down for whatever reason, you have a backup plan. So don't just have one that you joint on, both of them in your card, have another card as well, so you can actually access your account
October will be slightly cooler than the summer. It won't be cold. When I went the last time, it was December to January, and it was 50s and rainy most days. In October, it'll probably be still 60s, 70s. We might get a little rain, probably not that early in the wet season, but do you have any
I
better
was there in
thoughts?
October, and it can be cool up in the mountains sometimes.
Right.
Go on hikes or something, but it's not, it's actually nice. It's a nice time to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Are there harvests all done by this
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, the harvest festivals are in September. One last one, sometimes it works into the first week in October, but that's the end of the second harvest season. Yeah, that's, I was thinking, I don't think we get rain when I was there in October. It can rain, like you said, it's the edge of the rainy season.
Right.
But
part
it's
of
not gonna be cold.
Right, and part of it depends on where in the country you are too. You know, if you're down south, Beersheba's going to be probably pretty hot and warm because that's where it is. When we're around the Dead Sea, it'll be hot and warm, no rain there. Up to the north in Galilee, it might be a little cooler, a little more comfortable weather-wise maybe, but that's where it's more likely to get cold. Jerusalem, it's about the same. It'll generally be warmer, but mostly wet too. So.
But Jerusalem can be warm during the summer,
Yeah.
so you won't be in that season.
Yeah. When I did my archaeology stuff on the Sea of Galilee here in Hippos, it was July of both 2009 and 2010. It was routinely 100 teens in the shade. So it can get very hot there in the summer. We're not traveling in those months, and so it'll be a little more reasonable for us moving around, traveling, seeing things.
Definitely sunscreen on hot days.
You'll want sunscreen. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Big brim hat.
Yep. Lots of water too, and we'll talk about that as we keep going to start planning and details like that.
Do they carry water on their buses? I haven't been to this tour, but
It depends on the driver. This one, I can't remember if he charged $1 per bottle or if it was just free included with the tour. One way or another, it's pretty reasonable to have
we
cool
can buy
water.
like big bottles if you guys just call them up.
Yeah, they sell big liter water bottles and you can just fill those right back up, and that's helpful to have.
Yeah.
And all the hotels, you should be able to fill it up there too, and that'll last you most of the day.
You drink your milk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, bring yourself something. Go through the water pretty quick.
All right. Well, we are a little bit over the time I was thinking of spending together tonight. If you got any more questions or comments, please do let me know, and I can do my best to answer them. Our next meeting here is going to be in a few weeks toward the end of July. I did try to, like I said, spread out the dates, so if you can't make all of them, that's okay, but the more of these you can show up to, the better. I'm just trying to get us ready to go. It's coming quick. I can't believe it's less than a week now, or about a week till the final payments due, and then going on from there. I'm excited. I'm excited for you. I'm so glad to be joining you and to be able to lead you guys. It's going to be a good time.
Will we be able to get the information at the next meeting, like if we're not here, is there a way to find?
Yeah, so I'm recording all of them, so I can send whoever the recording that they want. Yep.
Pastor, if we don't know if we're paid up or not, is there,
You can give the company a call, say traveling. I think the current code is wool21. Just tell them your name. Do we owe you any money? And they'll let you know. I do have a list that's up to date as of may have been as of June of last year of who was paid up. So if you got any questions as of then, let me know. Otherwise, the tour company is going to be the best person to get in touch with.
They do also, they just sent an email last week, advising of what I owed last voucher, and they're like automatic, and I know she said
stuff here at St. Luke by praying together the Lord's Prayer, so that's how we'll do it tonight too. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Have a good night.